Thank you. Mr. Norman, would you have further comments?
Yeah, just one question for each of you. You know, we have an issue with what we're building. I go to the ones that are actually doing the work, the contractors, the individual people doing the layers. From where you sit, and it's pretty much back on what Mickey was talking about. From where you sit, what should we be doing in our roles? If you were sitting in Congress now, knowing what you know in your different department, what should we be doing?
From my side, you know, what we see is need to, you know, right now most of the infrastructure is just acquisition cost based. Okay, it's low bidder. Okay, so a contractor is going to bid to win the job. He's going to bid with some of the lower cost materials, which again, in a lot of cases, is the same thing that they've done in the past. And often, you know, if you're looking for, you know, on the procurement side, to say need to consider the resiliency and the life cycle costs, the longer term maintenance costs in making that decision. So you pick something that, even though it may cost a premium 10, 15% now, it's saving you in 30 years from doing it over again. And so that's a change somewhat in the procurement practices.
So you would recommend I do what?
I recommend that in those cases, in the infrastructure side, say that you need to consider, okay, a time frame of 30 years, 50 years, 75 years when you're making the choices of what is the lowest cost solution. And that it's not just today's cost, it's what's it's going to cost you in the future. And part of that, the future cost, is making sure you account for what's going to be those future weather events.
So advocacy. Is that right? Okay. Mr. Averill or Mr. Winfrey?
Yeah, I agree with my colleague here. The Economic Decision Guide is a formal framework for accounting for economically decisions that might include life cycle analysis. We've been discussing with communities this notion of a resilience dividend. So it's the idea that you might be designing for a particular event in mind over a long time horizon, but in doing so, you actually get a day-to-day benefit that's guaranteed, that you don't have to condition on the probability of the event. That might be, for example, less maintenance or better resistance to the frequent sort of annual events that you're going to see. So using a more formal and life cycle type cost analysis would be helpful.
And I would certainly follow on Mr. Reeves' point. I think the flip side of what he was talking about is lessening the fear of taking risks. Contractors, by definition, take the conservative view because they don't want to get sued. They don't want to have a bad outcome. They don't want to get blamed for something that could have been innovative. So it prevents a closer nexus between the research community and the contract community that does the work, because they are risk averse. So if there's any kind of measure that provides guarantees on the back end or lessens the risk for the contractor community, I think is a benefit.
And I'll just add briefly that, you know, as I was talking about in my testimony, if we ask questions about resiliency as they relate to funding, you will get more creative answers, and that's another way to raise everyone's awareness. So if I'm asking for this amount of federal funding for a bridge, if the question comes back, how is that bridge resilient to extreme rain events that we expect in that area, you will get a different answer than what the standard built practice is today.
Thank you so much. Y'all been very informative, and I have no further questions.